it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to this week's Sketch Sunday. So this week we are not using a My Favorite Things sketch. We are going to be using inspiration from a My Pink Stamper video that I will link to below in the more information description. I'm going to show you the supplies that we're going to be using and then we will get started. We're going to be using this stamp set from My Favorite Things. It's called Watercolor Flowers. And we're going to be using this piece over here. This is stamp 1, this is stamp 2, this is stamp 3, and then the center will be stamp 4. We're not going to be using any stems from that. And I will show you. This is what the flower is going to look like once it's all done. We are going to be using several colors of Hero Arts Shadow ink. We're going to be using mid-tone cornflower, mid-tone pool, mid-tone navy, and then also My Favorite Things in Lush Lagoon. So that's colors 1 through 4 for the stamps. We're also going to be using 2 colors of Distress ink, Mermaid Lagoon and Chip Sapphire. We're going to be using 2 mini ink blending tools. We are also going to be using this die from, I believe this is My Favorite Things. It says Friend. And I think that is, oh, one more thing. This Swiss Dots stencil from My Favorite Things. So let's begin. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the background piece. And I just used a piece of white cardstock cut down to 3.5 by 11. So I am taking the Hero Arts Shadow ink Cornflower Midtone, and I'm using that stamp number 1 to just place some of the bases of the flowers on there. I'm just stamping them on as I go, just trying to turn the stamp a little bit so that there's a little bit of variation in the way that the flowers are, and then I'm going back in and filling in some of the white spaces. Now I don't want to fill in all of it because we're going to do something else in a little while with the stencil. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm taking Hero Arts Shadow ink in Mid-Tone Pool and using that stamp number 2 and just lining it up over top of the stamped image that I already did. Now I don't care that it's not perfect. If I wanted it to be perfect, I would have used the Misty. I'm just kind of lining it up the best that I can by eyeballing it and stamping it on. I'm stamping the full flowers first because they're a little bit easier. The ones that are half on the paper and just only half of a flower on there, they're a little bit trickier to stamp. You kind of had to turn the stamp a couple of different ways to make sure that you had the right piece on there. So again, cleaning off the craft mat in between so that I don't cross-contaminate the colors, even though you'll see in a little bit that I do somewhere. So I'm taking the third ink, which is Hero Arts Shadow ink Mid-Tone Navy, and I'm doing the third step, which you can see there gives a little bit more definition to the flower, and it's the darkest color, the second darkest color that's going to go on there. So again, just lining up the stamp, and again, I don't care if it's perfect or not. I'm just trying to get it as close as possible. The third is probably the trickiest layer to do because it is a little bit more difficult to line up since there's not so much solid image to stamp around. So it took me a couple tries on some of them to get the placement right, but once I did the full ones, then I went back and did the partial ones and again, cleaned off my mat in between so is not to get too much of that ink on the paper. So now that I finished the third layer, we're going to start with the fourth, which is My Favorite Things in Lush Lagoon, and that's just the center of the flower. So that was a pretty easy one and quick one to stamp. So we're just going to finish up stamping the centers of the flowers and then cleaning up.